I don't want people to think just because someone's in law enforcement that it's safe. That's not the case.
Say if we can prevent just one child from being trafficked, it was well worth it. So this is a business. It is a multi-billion-dollar business. Mm-hmm. So when you sell a gun, you sold that gun. You sold drugs, you sold that drug. You can't, a body is repetitive.
Welcome back to Dr. Triple O podcast. This is part 2 of human trafficking. I'd like to welcome my guests back today, and we're going to be showing the trailer of the project they've been working on, and I think you guys are going to like it.
I have a daughter named Alexis, and she used to love to sit on my lap, and she would take her finger and she would twirl my hair. And it would be so annoying, but I loved it because she was so close to me. She was taken from this world too soon by the grips of abuse, addiction, and sex trafficking.
We were at a hotel in the summer with other tourists. There was a trafficking ring already networked, looking for children who were left alone, basically unaccompanied.
Many parents are not aware that these traffickers are often hiding in the shadows. They are people that you will see every single day. And oftentimes they're there and they will see you way before you ever can detect them.
FBI recently estimated there's 900,000 predators online, masquerading as a 14 or 15-year-old, but they're actually a 30 or 40-year-old luring somebody in.
She was on the phone all the time taking pictures. She stayed in her room a lot. She had no more self-worth. She had nothing left to give or to offer, and I believe that's what she felt and what was in her mind. This is hard for me.
Oftentimes we have a misconception that says girls put themselves in a position. They put themselves in these risky positions and vulnerable positions to be trafficked. That is not the case.
Some girls are being trafficked by girls their same age. So there's somebody that's in their peer group, somebody that knows them from school. So that's one of the trends we're seeing.
That there could very well be many thousands of victims right now trying to get out, trying to figure out a way to get out, and they need a little assistance. And then at some point, they begin to believe just how worthless and how shameful and how embarrassed and how guilty they have become, and they can no longer fight.
Now that we've seen the trailer, I would like for you guys to kind of discuss what we just saw and where to see more of it. So who wants to start?
I think we could start with Mr. Rogers. Yes, I think it started the same thing. Yes. It started with connecting with you first.
So a little bit about my story is in 2018, I worked as a bailiff in the courtroom for the sheriff's office, and I would always hear Florida's like number 2, number 3 in the country with as far as human trafficking. I'm like, hold up, I work in criminal court as a bailiff. I'm not seeing cases come through the system. So it didn't add up to me, So I started going into these events, and I hear the stories of these survivors and victims, and it tore my heart apart. I'm like, what can even though I didn't know much about it. So in 2018, I did a walk from Fort Lauderdale to Washington, D.C. to raise awareness. And for me, the most important thing, the most moving thing was I was getting emails from survivors sharing their stories with me, a man. So that meant a lot to me. And then the following year, God allowed me to do another walk from the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco to San Diego. Mm-hmm. And this is where I met these 2 young ladies here. And but the mission was still the same, to be an ally to survivors and let them know that, okay, all men aren't like this. Because men are the biggest buyers, the biggest, So that was my message, saying that all men aren't like this. And you know, we want to be an ally to those that's in vulnerable situations. And so, and this is where these two pick up.
Yeah.
I'm over here trying not to get emotional because just seeing all of this come full circle the way that it has, and seeing it really was, I have to say, it was divinely orchestrated. And the reason why I thought it was appropriate for Roger to share first was because he is a man, as he said, in this space. And I think it's so important for men to really step up so that, and I know Dr. Sandy can speak to this, so that women who have gone through this, children who've gone through this, see what a healthy man looks like. And we have a Dr. Allen as well, who's a part of the documentary, and he spoke as well about, you know, just being a voice for those who are voiceless. And I'm still trying not to get emotional, so I'm just not. But I'm just grateful that we all collectively came together to put this together. So that it can have a far reach and be on in every home, you know, on television, and people can know more about this. And I always say, if we can prevent just one child from being trafficked, it was well worth it. Yeah.
So the project again is Taking Innocence Project, and you can actually watch it. It is on Amazon Prime and Tubi, Apple,
Google
and
Play
Google
as well.
Play as well. And you know, to Tanika's point, we actually met on set of another project that I worked on called Bay Night, and we just happened to start talking about it. We both had started to learn about trafficking and realized that it happened in the U.S. To your point earlier when we started, I saw it start in India, and I was looking at different videos, and I saw that it was here in the U.S., and I was baffled. Because I'm like, no one's talking about, like, no one is talking about this. When you think about trafficking, you think about weapons trafficking, you think about drug trafficking. No one talked about human trafficking, which is modern day slavery. And so we were talking about it, and we're like, let's do a documentary on it. Yeah. And then that again led us to Roger. Roger actually spoke at Tanika's church home at the time, and Angel and Sandy, we met her that day, and Sandy spoke about her story, and we were so moved by her story. Like I said, we focused on the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why, and she was the who, a part of the story. So I think it's very important also for survivors to talk about their stories and people to give them the platform to talk about their stories, because the more we talk about it, the more people start to realize that this could be happening in their own home.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we had Dr. Kat as well,
Dr. Katarina,
who was in California. So we met with her, we interviewed her as well, and she was also in that space, very closely connected with FBI, and also very closely seeing what was happening in the industry out in Hollywood. And so that was a big thing as well. But we were able to shed just a little bit of light on that. But more importantly, you know, tell her story. You know, yeah.
It was Providence, because I met Roger, a nurse, wanted me to attend this banquet, and I attended the banquet. It was a charity banquet, and I had my book with me, and Roger had his shoes on stage. And remember that, Roger? He bought his shoes that he did these walks with, and I was so touched. And I always bring a book, no matter where I go, of my autobiography, to give it away. And I said, I'm going to give my book to him. I say, God, who do you want me to give this book? Who could this book touch? Because by this time in my life, meeting you, I was working with Angel Carter. I was working with others. Angel Carter is a part of this documentary. She lost her 18-year-old daughter in trafficking. And then when she came from the Carolinas to Florida, she came into a program that I was running. And I run programs all over the U.S. now. And I just came back from Jamaica speaking. So I speak internationally on this because, like Nisi said, this is a topic that I believe not only are we not talking about it, it's become normalized. Because sexuality has become normalized, pornography has become normalized, and it's just a thing, but it's not a thing because it leads to lifelong consequences. And I can tell you, from 11 years old, and I came out almost 13 when I was put in DCF custody, and I'm in my 50s now. And I can tell you there is lifelong consequences. So prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so when I met Roger and I gave him the book, and then he invited me to go to the church that night. And when he invited me, that's when I met these two amazing women that forever changed my life, because they allowed me to share my story and to share my autobiography that I wrote. And then Angel Carter came with me. And like I said, I work with not just survivors of human trafficking, but their parents, because it has to start with parents. Everything starts with our parents. And I can tell you, men, there are a lot of men that are dealing with unresolved grief and trauma. We live in a nation that not so long ago brought human beings to the Americas and throughout the Caribbean nations to be trafficked. That's been my ancestors. That's been a lot of our ancestors. And we forget about that. And I think we forget about that because of the lack of reparations from that. But that is the reality of America. And so we have normalized this construct of human trafficking because it's been with us for a long, long time. We were trafficked here. And so the epigenetic component of that is still with us. And I'm just so grateful to Tanika Clark and to Niecy Johnson, because I've cried many tears. And when I met them, I cried many happy tears, because they gave this survivor a voice and allowed me to share my story. And the more we share our stories, the more we resolve. We go to different levels of resolving the past. And the body keeps the score, like Dr. Bezel talks about, but we can get better, we can get healthy, but we do that intentionally. And that's what my organization, Love Gardens, offer. It's called the Second Rescue. And I also work with the Florida Department of Health, because I work in the HIV program, as you know, and there is an intersection of HIV and other sexually transmitted infections and human trafficking.
Wow. And speaking of which, that's something people also don't talk about, the sexually transmitted disease that goes along with this. And now with COVID, post-COVID, how does COVID pandemic affect or impact on human trafficking?
I mean, I think post-COVID probably looks, kind of like it did pre-COVID, but like during COVID, it was harder to keep track of, children or just people in general, because everybody's supposedly inside. So if someone's trafficked, and it was easy to move people through because everyone is inside. So I think post-COVID, people are back to the norm, right? You see people, and this is the point where people need to be vigilant and as Dr. Sandy always say, watchful, right? You need to also be on the lookout for what doesn't look normal. And sometimes if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. And so we have to speak up and say something, not walk and approach the, trafficker, but call the police, let them do their job, right? And not just think of, this child doesn't look safe, this child looks disheveled, looks like it might not be, their parent, but we don't say anything.
And I think with COVID, it also opened up avenues for medical teams to be more online. And the same way medical teams became more online, we started doing telehealth. It's the same way. And we have new porn sites now with kiddie porn sites that happened during that time. So they wouldn't lose the fetish. They wouldn't lose, that hit that they would get. And they were putting more and more children online on these very dark porn sites. And so it was still going on. It just changed the landscape just the same way telehealth changed, and we opened up new avenues for telehealth. They opened up new avenues for human trafficking via the internet.
And they found that, and I don't remember the exact resource, but they found that the traffickers, the predators, they would sit at their computer and literally eat there, use the restroom there, not move from their computers to find vulnerabilities, openings, where are people exposing their children, so that they can do whatever it is that they want to do, and prey on them.
Wow. So if someone suspects that a kid or an adult is being trafficked, is there a number they should call? Is there, I think we need to get information out. Um, what do you, before I even give a phone number, what do you think people should do? Or if they suspect?
Well, while we get the phone number, just yesterday I got a call from an attorney in Fort Lauderdale. She's a family law attorney, and in her office was a client slash victim of human trafficking, and she called me because the victim was wanting to. She came over through the Caribbean on a boat, and she explained to the attorney, that 4 times a day in Miami there are a boat load full of women coming every day to Miami shores, and they're being unfortunately handed over to a lot of strip club owners and things like that. So I mean, this is way beyond what I do, but so I reached out to some people I know in Miami, but the point I'm going to make is this: is so prevalent. It's so prevalent. And another thing, I work in law enforcement. I have a lot of friends that are survivors. I hesitantly say this, but it's true. You got to be cautious even with law enforcement, because there have been a lot of victims. Their biggest trafficker was the police officer. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's a battle. Sometimes it's a battle within a battle. You know, one of my friends from Costa Rica, a survivor, if you look it up, she was trafficked through the Fairfax County in Virginia Police Department. It was a big lawsuit going on there. And she called me because she was terrified. She was going to testify in federal court in D.C., but she was getting the threats and things like that. And I'm saying to myself, wow, they were initially using her to lure traffickers, but she became a victim through law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So the reality is, it's everywhere. And like I said, that's part of the battle that advocates and survivors face on a daily basis. Figuring out, okay, what's real and what's not. What's best me and what's not. So I want to throw that out there because I don't want people to think just because someone's in law enforcement that it's safe. That's not the case.
Yeah. And I think I'll add to that, Roger. One thing I want everyone that's listening to us today to do, look for signs. There's 3 distinct signs. Number 1, tattoos. These traffickers love to tattoo their property because that's what they see human lives as, property. And look for the tattoo. It will be a name, it will be a pet name, it will be a certain name. That's number 1. Number 2, look for changes in their pathology. Look for changes in their personality. So if you were bubbly and happy before, look for that person that's always alone. Now they're becoming more of a recluse. They're becoming more secluded and more isolated in and of themselves. Look for that. And then look for the mental health signs. There will be cutting. Look for the cutting on the arm. Look for the biting of the nails. Look for the tearing of the skin. Look for certain things like that. That is going to let you know if something is going on with that person. Now it's up to you to not just see it, but to act immediately. Because what's the worst case scenario is that person is safe and they're just already going through something and they're rescued. The best case scenario is you've saved a life.
Yeah. And I just want to give a little more details on the video that I saw the other day, because I want people to understand like how horrendous this is. So when I said that the young men who would be at the predators that would be at the computer, using the restroom at the computer, they would keep buckets at their computers and use the restroom in the buckets because they did not want to get up. And the reason I wanted to highlight that was to show the intentionality behind what they do and why it's so important for us to be intentional as a society, as a community, as parents, in making sure that our children are safe. It's very serious. And like you said, eventually it'll come to your backyard if you're not careful. If we all don't do anything about it, but also if we don't become intentional about protecting our families.
And they won't stop, by the way. I need you to know this. They won't stop, because mental health that leads people to be predators like this, is a dark psychology behind it, and they won't stop. You asked R. Kelly, you asked Jeffrey Dahmer before he was killed in prison. He said in an interview, I would have not stopped if they didn't catch me, if law enforcement didn't stop me, I wouldn't have stopped, because these are drives, these are compulsions. When the brain gets wired around this, I promise you, there is they won't stop themselves because they can't. So this is something that we have to deal with on every level of our society.
Yeah, and so money is the root of all evil, right? So this is a business. It is a multi-billion-dollar business. So we have to think about, like, from a trafficker's perspective, they're bringing in a lot of money. So when you sell a gun, you sold that gun. You sold drugs, you sold that drug. You can't, a body is repetitive. That's repetitive income that you're coming in. So when you're thinking about, like, to your point, the young lady that said she got out of it, well, you're still vulnerable to someone else. So, we have to think about that. This is big business. And, when you're thinking about actually fighting against this, like, we're stopping someone's money. So, I just wanted to kind of put that out there as well.
And they're not afraid of prison, by the way. The pathology is not afraid of prison. So that's why they'll keep doing what they're doing. So so we need to know the reality of this.
Now, I think you mentioned something a few minutes ago about men. I think most of the traffickers, I assume, are men. But at home, what are the fathers doing? I want people out there to understand something. I think for you fathers, for you men out there, you need to take the responsibility to talk to your kids. You need to, talk to your spouse and sit down with your kid and play active role in your family. Don't just go to work, come back home, and ignore your responsibility. It's very important. Everyone is responsible for the well-being of their kids and your family. So I always think that, and don't think this problem is just in Costa Rica, Dominica, Colombia, whatever the case may be. The problem is here. It's always been here. Like she said, human trafficking has been normalized. This is something that we've seen in this country. So we need to start thinking differently.
Also, let's just share a quick story. My daughter, she was 15 years old at the time. She's 18 now. I've taken her to a few events, human trafficking. She exercises every morning. She walks around the park near her house. And one morning, another 15-year-old girl approached her and started asking this basically, hey, where do you go to school? Are you on social media? The typical teenage girl talk. Then the questions became a little more personal. Are you close with your father? Are you still a virgin? Even at this point, it didn't register to my daughter that this can be potentially a dangerous situation. Now, like I said, I've taken her to events, I've talked to her, things like that. And then the real red flag was when she said her older uncle wants to meet her. So I'm thinking, I'll never forget, I was at a wedding in Boca. My ex-wife called me and told me about it. I remember someone taught me, don't freak out. Don't get emotional. So I called my daughter, I said, Mom, let's get together tonight and have dinner and this talk, okay? And that conversation, even at that point, she was like, she was being real friendly and nice, and and I didn't try to force it down. I just tried to explain to her my experience as far as what I know. 11:41, I never forget, she called me and said, Daddy, you know what? As I thought about it, you were right, But I thought, even with that, it's still challenging. Even all this time I spend with her and the places I bring her, and here these traffickers, they proactive. They send a girl, her age, and so they're always one step above.
That's what Epstein did. He paid girls to bring in girls.
And the average age of entry, right, is that age group, right, 11 to 13, because their brain is not developed yet. And so they're not going to pick up on the signs. So just what you did as a father is what needs to happen. Like, you have to talk to your kids, and it's great that she actually shared it with you and shared it with her mom so that you can have that conversation with her.
And that's what we're seeing more of, the women, the young women being used to groom, to recruit, to do all these things.
And they don't have their fathers in their life. And Sunday is Father's Day. And so I think the best thing that a father can do for his family is to get help himself, resolve his unresolved grief and trauma, go to counseling. So many of our, especially black men, most men in general, because you've been socialized not to cry, socialized not to be in touch with your feelings. So it's normal to you to be tough and to feel tough and want to be tough. But with that toughness, you can become a beast. And it puts you, literally predisposes you to become a potential perpetrator, a manipulator, narcissist, on and on. I can go on and on, but for the sake of the time, the best thing a father can give their family is a healthy self, is to get healthy and to get rid of that ego and that pride to say, that's nothing wrong with me, I don't need no help, I'm good. But your wife is crying, your children are scared of you, and you're not a healthy individual because you have unresolved grief and trauma from your own childhood. That's the best thing you can do for yourself.
I love what you just said, because one of the things that I speak about is how we have a role for a male and a role for a female. Growing up, you know, when a boy falls down, we say, get up, don't be a sissy. When a girl falls down, oh, come here, man, you know. So we raise these boys to show no emotion, to care for nothing. And then when they grow up, they get married, and then you want them to be emotional. You've already raised them not to show emotion. So how can then they be, you know, be thoughtful, be caring, we should cry, or we should, they can't.
They can't.
And I think that's one of the things we have to change. We have to change the narrative where, you know, they're human too. We're human. Don't to be bleed when you cut us. I mean, to think that men cannot cry, cannot show emotion would be wrong. It doesn't make us any less of a man. It doesn't mean we can't go out and hunt and bring home the pig, whatever you want to call it. So we got to think differently. I mean, truthfully, I mean, I think that because it backfires when they become an adult. They don't know how to love. They don't know how to express their love to women. And I think that's a problem.
No empathy. No empathy. And that's a big problem.
And unfortunately, a lot of young boys that got molested have taken their life because of that. We don't know how to talk. We don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to share with someone that we've been hurt. We're in pain. You know what I mean? So it trickles and it affects someone that's been molested or trafficked because they're embarrassed because we've been taught not to talk about these things. You know?
So now going back to the phone number to call if you suspect.
It's the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and they're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so you can call at any time. And the number is 1-888-373-7888. Again, that is 1-888-373-7888.
Now, before we close, I'd like to share the name of the book that you wrote, in case anyone is interested, because I want people to read your book and really see, you know, what you've been through, because it will help somebody else. And can you please share that with the audience?
Yes, so my book is called Lessons from the Thorns, His Grace is Sufficient, and you can find my book on Amazon. It is now on Audible, thanks to Nisi. Nisi and Tanika came over and shared that, so it's now on Audible, and it can be purchased also at my website, which is SandraMariaAnderson.com. Again, SandraMariaAnderson.com. Thank you so much, Dr.
Oh, my pleasure. And I think the beauty of this is we have social media now. So there could be people in Sri Lanka or in India listening to us or watching the podcast. They can access those books and those movies. So please look for those. It's very important.
And Roger also wrote a book that I would love him to share if that's
please
okay.
do.
The name of my book is sorry.
It's been a long day.
It's called With Every Step, An Imperfect Man on a Miraculous Journey, which I got to credit Sandra for the title. Remember I called and asked you? With Every Step, An Imperfect Man on a Miraculous Journey. It's on Amazon, so I'll be grateful if you read it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like for you all to maybe share some closing remarks or advice.
As I think everything has been said from, you know, what I can think of. But as you were speaking and as I was reflecting on just being here, it's very clear why you decided to do this today and where your heart is. I love the stories that you shared about, having your 2 daughters and talking to them, and the fact that you can share that with other men can see that, and it be an example for them as well. So thank you for having me, Dr. Tripolo, and you've got my vote.
I would say, again, just reiterate that trafficking does not look like what you think. Be aware of the signs, as Dr. Sandy pointed out earlier. Be aware that it's not always men that are traffickers, so it could be women as well. It could be kids that are also traffickers. And then also talk about it at the dinner table. Bring back, old-fashioned discussions around, the dinner table, and put the technology away, because that could save someone's life.
Yeah.
And you got my vote as well.
Dr. OCME for president of the world.
Closing remarks?
Closing remarks for me is, you are the most important person in the world. You have to know that, because we can only love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And if we love ourselves, if we truly love ourselves, you can never hurt another human being. You can never hurt your fellow brothers and sisters. So learn to love yourself. Get the mental health therapy that you may need, and contact us if you need us, because it's needed. It changed my life. I'm so grateful that I went to therapy, because I'm so grateful.
First, thank you for this platform. I know when she reached out to us, you had to be someone of great character. So thank you so much, Doctor, and you got the demeanor, you make us feel safe. You got the demeanor where I can tell people trust you and can confide in you. So thank you for that. My closing remark is this, that you don't have to be a perfect person to make a difference in someone's life. Matter of fact, I think God wants you to know, because we're not perfect, God uses our weakness and turns it into strength. So don't put too much pressure on yourself.
Thank you. Well, I don't think I can, top those closing remarks. But I must say that mental illness is such an important topic, and you spend so much time going to the gym to exercise for your physical health. You go to the doctor, but you don't spend time on your mental well-being. You don't want to go see a psychologist or psychiatrist. I think it's time we start to really accept that we need to work on this. If we can work, with ourselves, both externally and internally, we can do a better job. So, on that note, I say go home tonight, put your phone down for at least 1 hour, and have a communication with your spouse, your children, and see what that feels like. Until next time, take care of yourself.